Hey guys, welcome to the YieldNest video series where we talk all things YieldNest and restaking. In this video, we're going to look into the technical aspects of the protocol. We're going to look under the hood to understand how everything really works. So as we've already discussed, YieldNest is a liquid restaking protocol. Now, what does this actually mean? YieldNest offers users access to restaking yield while allowing them to maintain a liquid position. And this is achieved by allowing them to mint a ynETH token or a ynLSD token, which is a fully transferable token that integrates with the rest of DeFi. And this is what they would get in exchange once users deposit ETH within our system or other types of liquid staking derivatives. What happens is that the ynETH token starts off as a one-to-one token with respect to the value of ETH, and its value increases over time as the system accrues rewards, which accumulate towards the value of ynETH, and the value of this token increases to represent the yield gained by the system. The user flow follows the following steps, which include user depositing ETH into the system, receiving ynETH in exchange. After this point, the system itself, which is a smart contract protocol, picks up the deposited yield and stakes it within Ethereum validators. And this constitutes the first part of the yield within the system. At the base layer, the YieldNest protocol functions very much like an LSD. It's a very similar system. So in the way that Mantle ETH works with METH and in the way StakeFrax ETH works, YieldNest works in a very similar fashion. So we currently operate in a federated manner with industry-grade liquid staking providers. These provide all the staking services within the system. And from this point onwards, the protocol starts to differ in a significant way from the standard LSD path or LSD protocol. Once funds are staked within the Ethereum beacon chain, the validators that are created within the system have their withdrawal credentials pointed to EigenLayer smart contracts. Now, what this achieves is essentially it yields control to the EigenLayer system in such a way that the exit point of these funds from the beacon chain is always the EigenLayer system. This allows essentially restaking to actually happen. So we have the base layer of staking, which is achieved on the beacon chain, and the withdrawal credentials being set to EigenLayer itself allow EigenLayer to apply its own logic related to whatever it has to perform on its side, particularly slashing, and have control of the funds at that level. The integration with EigenLayer has its own level of complexity, and besides essentially yielding control over the staked yield, there's a whole layer of functionality that needs to be integrated with respect to delegating the stake to different operators and managing shares and allocation to different operators. Now, just to cover that a little bit, what are operators? In the context of EigenLayer, the operators are, in a way, service providers, just how validators are hosted by different staking providers. So are operators hosting what we call active validated services. Now, the active validated services are actually the end game and the goal of this whole setup, because they are the services that operate on top of this restaking layer, since they're the ones that require what we offer, which is crypto economic security. So these services require, in one way or another, staked assets, so crypto economic security, but instead of bootstrapping their own network, they're working on a platform such as EigenLayer or any other kind of restaking technology to get access to those staked funds. And YieldNest essentially facilitates the access to such staking capital while making it easy for users as well to deposit their capital, obtain a liquid position, and eventually bank on the yield that's actually provided by all those active validated services. Since the active validated services perform a utility function, some useful function, they provide a payment in return, and that constitutes the AVS yield. And here we get the second layer of our yield, which is the AVS provided yield. So we started off with a liquid staking yield provided by just a beacon chain yield that comes from the Ethereum layer itself. And now we stacked on top of that the AVS yield as well. And at this point, you could say that the restaking cycle is complete. And of course, as we all know, in crypto, there's a whole other layer of rewards, which just comes naturally as airdrops or any other sort of reward system layered on top, whether it's points or just some sort of token stream or airdrop. And this stacks as a third layer of rewards that is usually more temporary, but it's still a very significant aspect of the larger crypto ecosystem, especially in the early stages, as all the platforms and all the players involved look to accrue users and attract capital. So we've gained now a good view of how the overall system works and what comes actually into the yield of YieldNest as a whole, and how all these pieces come together to achieve that. What also happens under the hood is a whole system that needs to manage this entire setup. Since we have a lot of moving pieces, we have validators on one side, and then we have operators, and we have AVSs. And what we essentially offer within YieldNest is a full package deal where all of these things are managed for the users. The users only have to restake their funds and obtain a liquid restaking token in return. And all this complexity that comes down to selecting operators or selecting AVSs that the operators work with is something that YieldNest manages. Currently, that's managed by YieldNest DAO in a more centralized manner, but over time, this will be more and more decentralized. And what's going to be key in achieving this is going to be the ynD token, which is, of course, a governance token that also pays off dividends based on the protocol's overall revenue to users, and it will allow key decision-making within the protocol in terms of all these aspects with regards to management. So operator selection and then AVS selection, which of course plays into the whole thesis and the whole reason why we built YieldNest, which is really focused on risk management and managing this set of AVSs in such a way that we reduce the probability of slashing or the amount that's being slashed, and we really focus on getting the best risk-adjusted return for users, which obviously can mean lowering the risk of slashing, finding the best yield, and keeping all these things dynamic and adjusting them over time to ensure that the users get the best deal. And the long-term vision for us is not just exposing our current tokens, which manage both native ETH staked, but also LSDs. So we have ynETH and ynLSD, but to really give users fine-grained control over time. And the vision there is to create what we call AVS baskets. And these will still be YN tokens, so there will still be liquid restaking tokens, is that each token will be backed by particular operators that operate particular selected AVS baskets that focus on a particular set of AVSs that have common risk-reward profiles and common traits. One can easily imagine at this point that you can think of a industry grouping. You can think of something like an ynAI token or a yn sequencer token. Of course, this may change over time since users may prefer just something that groups things in terms of their risk profile and their risk-reward profile. But to get the idea behind the concept is that you will get access to yield in a fine-grained controlled way by selecting the token that exposes you to the right AVSs that you want to be exposed to. And as we all know, this is extremely valuable because all industries move in cycles. So users may at some point want to be exposed in particular to AI technology, and any sort of influx of capital in that particular area, any sort of boosted yield in that particular area because of very high usage. And of course, these go through their own cycles as well. And users will want to, over time, adjust concentrated positions and maybe at some point move from a, let's say, AI-focused allocation to a sequencer-focused allocation, depending on what is the trending AVS at the time. And this is really what we're aiming for with YieldNest, to provide this flexibility and, of course, maximize security and really reduce the downside risk for users. So this is our main focus with the product. Thanks so much for listening. If you have any questions, do reach out to us in our community. Our community is always open to discuss all these problems with you. And we take ideas from our community as well. We really want to build this together with you and understand all the feedback that you guys have and really build a product that serves our users in the best way possible. Thanks.